My name's Rhianon, I'm from the Family Carer Support Service, and Dalia and I are going to do a joint presentation about how we can get it right for family carers. So we thought we'd start with an overview. What are we going to talk about in the next 45 minutes? We know that all families are different. Are the fundamentals the same for everybody? Different kinds of support, locally and nationally, can help families to achieve their aspirations. And how do we support the experts to become more expert? We know that individuals are experts, we know that families are experts, but they may need a little extra help to become more expert. Why do some people and families get better or more support than others? And what does the law say about this? So as I said before, I manage the Family Carer Support Service, which is part of HFT, which is a provider of support for adults with learning disabilities. We're a national service supporting any family carer who has a relative with a learning disability, and we provide support in lots of different ways. So we give one-to-one support by phone, email, letter, and also now social media. I managed to get the logos in down the side. And we also design and run workshops specifically for family carers, and we do workshops on all kinds of issues, including decision-making and the Mental Capacity Act, changes to benefits such as DLA to personal independence payment, and workshops around navigating the health and social care system. Most of our workshops are around the rights of the family carer, because we know that family carers are excellent at supporting their relatives most of the time, but they often aren't listened to, or if they're listened to, they're not really heard. So our workshops, we try to make sure that family carers know how they can be heard by those professionals. We produce a number of resources as well. Twice a year we produce a Family Carer News Digest, which includes information about law and policy changes that are really important for people with learning disabilities and family carers. But we also have a feature article every time, which we like family carers to contribute to. So in the past, we've had feature articles talking about community interest companies that have been set up by people with learning disabilities and their family carers, such as Pulp Friction, which some of you may know about. Our other guides and resources include a guide called Using the Mental Capacity Act, which is incredibly useful and important for people who have relatives with learning disabilities. The Mental Capacity Act has a lot of bearing on how people are supported to make decisions, but it also talks about how family carers should be involved in those decision-making processes. Our other guides have been around changes to benefits and making sure that your relative is safe, so looking at safeguarding issues. And we're working on a resource on the Care Act for family carers, because the Care Act is the new law for social care, which came in at the beginning of April this year. And we know lots of people don't really know very much about what the changes bring in the Care Act. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. We represent family carers' voice in several forums, and we work in partnership with other organisations such as the Sharing Caring Project that Dalia is going to talk to you about. And we're also a member of the National Valuing Families Forum, which is a forum of regional representatives of family carers who come together a few times a year to discuss the issues that are going on locally and nationally for them as families. And that information is then passed up to the Learning Disability Programme Board at the Department of Health to inform law and policy making. So that's how we feed into the national picture. Over to Dalia.
Okay, so we work really closely with organisation, with HFT, with their national resources to be able to deliver sort of good support, hopefully, to families locally. So I work as part of a local Mencap society in Sheffield, where we're in touch with hundreds of families, providing information and advocacy, sort of emotional and practical support in different ways, and helping people hopefully to bridge their way into finding the good support for the whole family, because it's about getting things right for the whole family. And supporting people to speak up, and information sessions and all sorts of things. But I think what we'll do is, I'm not going to spend loads of time on that, just remember about the camera and the option of doing that, but I'm not going to be allowed to do that, am I? But maybe just focus on there and not here. That'll look better. Okay, so when we're trying to get things right for families, so it's getting it right for families, we worked out that there's 3 key things that we need to get right for families, and it's the essence behind everything that we do on a local level in terms of what we're trying to get, well, local and national level. And the first thing is getting the right support in place now for people. And you might think, well, why is there a picture of a commode on there? And that's my prompt to remind me to tell the commode story, because some people might remember there was a lady who ran a project for supporting families in Shropshire called Flick Pennell, and I never forget her saying to me a tale of when she started work and she was going in to do some work with families, older families, and she went bustling in and with all that can happen and all the support available and what's going to be happening and things. And this gentleman said to her, "This is all very nice, dear, but nobody's been to empty the commode for 3 days." And actually, but and that stays in my head for all sorts of reasons, but especially because if we don't get things right for people on an everyday basis, if things aren't going right on a day-to-day basis, then we can't start looking at how else to make things to support people to improve the opportunities and to prepare for emergencies, or even start planning for the future and being able to pursue goals like being able to set up a dance company. So we've got to make sure that the basics and everything is right for the start. The second thing is that loads of families talk about the one thing that keeps them awake at night is worrying about what might happen to the person they care for in an emergency. And I'm actually not just talking about people who are still caring at home. There's so many families who are supporting their relatives who are not living in the family home anymore, but they're an absolutely essential part of people's support packages. And we need to make sure those families aren't lost as well. And then there's planning for the future and being able to prepare for what happens in the long term as well. So what does it look like if we're trying to get things right for families? And I suppose it's difficult because everything's going to be different for different families. But over the years, we've really talked to a lot of families about what is the essence of getting things right for people. And hopefully this should work. Yay. Okay. So the number one thing people say is, if you get things right for the person I care for, then you've got things right for me. For most families, the most stress comes from knowing that things are not happening in the right way, that people aren't being supported to achieve their goals and their dreams, that something's gone wrong on a day-to-day basis, that they're not able to, people aren't able to make the most of life, or people aren't safe or well or happy or properly supported and things. So actually, if you get things right for the person, then you've usually taken the majority, an awful lot of stress off of that family straight away. Now, the rest of them aren't necessarily in the right order, they're just in the random order. One of the next one we've got is that if we get things right for families, it means that families get a life of their own, as well as being able to work to do things together as a family. So I think it's important that family carers are able to have their own lives and opportunities, and that they actually have some choices over their own life as well. And there's a lot of families where that sometimes is quite overlooked. We need to make sure that there's family-centred approaches are being taken. That's a bit at the bottom, sorry, people at the back. But it's about taking that family-centred approach. It's around things like, the most recent story in a colleague of mine in our team is trying to support someone and doing a lot of advocacy, because there's a lady who's in her 90s and cares for her daughter, and they've got a package of support in place. But actually, the package of support will come and it makes a cup of tea for the daughter, but the people refuse to make a cup of tea for mum. Well, there's something really wrong there, So actually, that's in the process of all being changed and challenged and new support found. But it's about, you need to get things right for everybody and look at families as a family and see what's happening. We've got, for families, it's a lifetime experience of caring. That phrase is true. People don't, it's not something that usually stops suddenly. It's something, people, different stages, but it's a lifetime experience. It's a lifetime of expertise as well. And that needs to be valued by people who are working with families, coming into contact with people. Carers say to us that if you get things right for us, it means open and honest, transparent communication. people aren't afraid to hear the truth, and actually sometimes it's easier to hear the truth in a good way than actually never getting a straight answer, and things. So, you know, that's really, really important to people. There's ways of saying things, but like actually people would rather know what is and isn't possible and how, rather than waste their time chasing something that's never going to happen. People would like to be involved properly, not just tokenistically, but actually respected and understood for the experience that they bring, and actually I think it's coming later on, but I'll say it anyway, sort of being able to be partners in caring. People want to feel valued and feel that they are being properly, not just listened to, but actually heard, I think, which is what Rhianon said. That you are partnership working, you're all sharing the same goal. Everybody should be working around supporting the individual to have the best possible life and opportunities, and to be healthy, happy and safe. And you know, but people need to work together and share that partnership sort of approach and things. For getting it right for families can often mean a really good carers assessment as well. These often don't get done, and Rhiannon's going to talk a bit more about them. The New Care Act actually brings us new opportunities around getting that right. For some people, it means a bit of practical support. What is it that's missing? Maybe a bit of help with shopping, maybe a bit of help with some cleaning, maybe a bit of somebody to support you to go to a hospital appointment. It's some of that practical stuff that might make a big difference that's actually quite simple to put in place. It's being able to have a social life with family and friends, having the right equipment, having the right information, and information that's up to date and relevant. I'll never forget seeing a family where they were told that their son shouldn't stay overnight away from them because he'd had one bad experience 50 years ago, and a doctor had said, "Oh, I don't think you should leave him. He'll die if you left him alone." And no one had ever said anything different to him, to them. So he'd never been away from home since. So it's actually about information that's up to date, that's relevant, so people have often got a lot of myths from before, and nobody's ever sort of helped people to go through that and know what is and isn't true. Families need breaks from caring. Quite often the person cared for needs breaks as well. So it's about, but there needs to be a real range and choice and flexibility around how those breaks happen. Families need to not be made more poor through caring as well. They need to have the opportunity to be able to not be made poorer through that, and there's access to information, benefits, advice and things as well. Families say that continuity, not hundreds of different people coming in and out of their relative's life, makes a massive difference to people, being able to have those relationships. And the number one thing that we need to get right for families is being able to help families to have some sort of peace of mind for the future and things. It's very hard. You're never going to have total peace of mind, but actually you can get a lot closer to it than many families are at the moment. Is that okay? Hopefully. Okay, so I'm going to, following on from that, if we're getting it right for families, what actually needs to be happening? And there are a number of things that should be happening, but there are 3 things at the heart of all work and support with families that needs to be happening. Firstly, we need to be listening to families. We need to actually, not just once, but actually making sure that we're continuing to listen, continuing to hear what people are saying, asking the right questions, not necessarily always making people repeat things hundreds of times. We need to be using family-centered approaches. Again, it's back to the tea story, but actually, do you actually know what's happening? Sometimes people only ask people about one part of their life, and they never ask what else is going on for that carer. And there are so many people who are actually caring for more than one person, or actually are struggling with other aspects of their life, and that's not actually asked about, and nobody sort of gets the whole picture. And the third thing that is the fundamental is we need to have the opportunity to, people need to be able to build trust and relationships with families. It sounds like it's almost like a bit of a luxury in this day and age, but actually it's not, because there are lots of people who do have a long-term relationships with people, and often that's frontline staff, but there are more and more organisations and services that are out there, and sometimes you might not necessarily be working directly in a carer support organisation, but you've still got that relationship, you still built that trust. And if we need to make sure that the people who families trust are enabled to support them as well. So if you're sort of trying to get those in place, then quite often it's relatively, sort of it flows from there to actually do the practical and the positive things that really do make a difference to people's lives. So we've got, these are some families that we worked with. Oh, I've got the wrong slide in front of me. Sorry, I'm like a well-organised, I've got loads of pieces of paper, which is probably not actually that helpful, but I felt better for writing them. But there's actually, it was hard to narrow it down, because anybody who knows me knows I'm quite a waffler, and Rhiannon's given me strict instructions. I've got to watch. I've got somebody who's about to go like that to me when I get to the end of my bit. It's true. I turned the clock back though. No. But we're very lucky, because in the families that we work with in Sheffield, we're now working. It used to be that when we started the project, we actually started just working mainly with older family carers, and actually now we've been able to take it down, and we're starting to work with young people coming up through transition. And what's really interesting is, if we go back to those fundamentals of listening, family-centered approaches, building trust and relationships, it's all the same at different parts of people's lives. It's just that the journey sort of has spikes up and down when people need support at different stages. So we're lucky in that we have a mixed team, and we're able to meet a variety of needs, but it's not been easy for us, and we've actually lost a huge amount of funding over the last few years. But we're lucky because we've got the fundamentals in place, and we work within an organisation, and we're able to and we work in partnership with other local organisations for carers as well. So between us, we sort of plug lots of gaps. So the things that I'm about to describe, where things have happened for the families that you're seeing there, it's not necessarily us working by ourselves, it's us working with other people and using local services and resources that are already there as well, but being able to bridge people and signpost people into the right support where needed, but being able to act as at the heart of things to be able to support families to speak up. So these are some of the additional things just with this family. These families, with all of there's 3 different families there who are happy for me to be talking today. I've got their permission and things. With all of them, there's been an element of carer advocacy. All of the carers have had different issues, different needs, different things arising, and we've been able to, different people within the team, been able to make those relationships with the families and be able to respond. All of them have, this is in a different, all of them actually have been supported around preparing for carers assessments, understanding what it is that they do that's not necessarily, it's just their normal. It's not that they think that they do anything particularly special, it's just normal for them, it's the routine that they've been in, but it would be very difficult for somebody else to do what they do. So actually helping people to unpick what they do, helping people to, helping the carers to sort of get that across to other professionals through carers assessments and things. All of the families have had additional support as a result of that, and that's mainly been through being able to support people with advocating through assessment processes and so forth, but also just having local knowledge and being able to signpost people into opportunities that have arisen. One of the families has ended up with a support package in their own right as a result of the carers assessments, and that's to help with some cleaning, because she had so much on her plate that it was just a bit of extra that took pressure off. There's unfortunately support around challenging decisions that weren't right as well, that carer wasn't happy with, but it's very hard often to be the only non-professional in a room and being able to say, I don't agree with that. And sometimes you need somebody with you to say, that's okay to say that, it's all right to feel that, and this is why, and actually to have somebody else feeling like they're on your side. With the families, all the families have accessed short breaks, respite services in different ways. For some people, it's not through overnight services. One person, it's by extra support to take him out to different social activities. For another person, it's been an overnight service, and that's what's worked for them. There's been advice about managing money. People have been appointees for years, but actually, particularly as you're getting older and things, sort of advice around separating out finances has been absolutely critical for people, and about appointee services and what an appointee service should be doing as well and not doing, so people know how to choose. There's been health advocacy, particularly. That's been particularly important for one of the families here. Somebody to go to appointments, sometimes you're so busy trying to support somebody at the appointment that you don't get to take all that information down. So that's been really important. We supported people to complete hospital passports, a document to help that people can then take with them if they're in the hospital service, so that to help the medical staff know how to support somebody properly. We've helped people with emergency planning. We call it putting cushions in place, thinking about all the what ifs and trying to address some of those things so that people are more prepared, and the people who might be people's emergency contacts know what to do and who to ring as well. Planning for the future, we supported around that. The information and the signposting. The welfare rights, I think I mentioned that before. People have changed benefits and things, especially with the PIP coming in. More social and leisure opportunities, including for the carer. It's not just about the social and leisure opportunities for the person being cared for. It's also for carers who are often quite isolated and things as well. There's one colleague has supported somebody to find a knit and natter group that she absolutely loves and goes to when her son's not there, and it's made a right difference. She's found people living in her local area. She's only ever sort of mainly mixed with carers before, because that's when her opportunities have been, and it's almost like she's been a bit left out of what else is around. Peer support and carer groups, people come along to lunch groups and nobody often understands like another carer going through things. Most of our carer support groups happen in the pub, which is really hard work. But it's actually, the people asked to go to we have information sessions, but people asked if we'd have some more sociable sessions, and actually that's where most of the information swapping happens and people are most relaxed. And sometimes quite boozy, but that not me ever. Honest, my manager's here somewhere. Sorry. We've done lots of life story work, sort of person-centered planning approaches and life story work with people, trying to help people capture the history and sort of know all that expertise and knowledge that the carer often has, that's so essential, and it can't be lost from people who might, particularly people who aren't able to speak up and tell people themselves. It's really important that those stories aren't lost. Unfortunately, there's support. There's a lot of emotional support around bereavement. Support with one person two people now have moved on, and there's a lot of support for everybody there. Support to get to know the new place. Support for the care as well, and especially afterwards, it's like a bereavement for people when they change the role so much. We also link people into well-being sessions, like so, for example, mind and body sessions for carers across the city and things, which people have really enjoyed, and we've done yoga sessions and all sorts of different things, and then sort of again recognising that multiple caring role and the fact that people. We're not the only, we often don't know all the answers, but we need to go to people who do. And actually being part of a bigger, linked into a generic carer service as well, there's often that expertise around the city as well. So that's just with those families there, all that support around, just from being able to getting it right for people and the listening and using the right approaches and being able to build a relationship. So hopefully that's just sort of talked about some of the parts about how we can get it right for carers. And a lot of it hasn't necessarily cost a lot of money. It's about listening in the first place. So I'm just going to hand back over to Rhiannon, and hopefully I've not even overrun on her bit.
Thank you. Excellent. Thanks, Dalia, for telling us about what goes on in Sheffield. That's fine. We know that there's some really good stuff going on in Sheffield with the Sharing Caring project. I just need to find my notes now. But do families all get this kind of support all around England? I think we all know that the answer to that is no. So why does it seem that it's a postcode lottery, or is it the people who shout the loudest are the ones that get the support? I'm going to do a little bit of exploration around that when I talk to you about the Care Act and what the Care Act brings for family carers. So it really helps if you know what your rights are and the rights of your relative as a family carer, so that you can challenge when things go wrong, or you feel you are challenging a decision that you feel is wrong, but you're not sure whether it is wrong or not because you don't know the policy or the law behind it. But having a little bit of information about which document says that the local authority can or can't do something, it can make a huge difference to family carers to get things right for themselves and for their relatives. So, as I mentioned before, in April, the Care Act came in. It's the new law for social care, and it brings together lots of different acts of law, because in the past, social care law was very difficult to navigate because there were over 12, I think, acts that all came together to make up social care law and how we deliver care and support to people. So the Care Act is intended to bring all those laws together, but also to make law of personalisation, which is something that we have been doing for many, many years. People with learning disabilities and their family carers are the pioneers of personalisation. And I'm not going to talk about personalisation because you all know it all and you've known it for years. But finally, I think the government is aware that personalisation is the right approach, and let's make it law. So the Care Act also really strengthens rights for family carers, which I'll go into in a moment. So I just wanted to show you this pretty slide that I made. I think it looks like a sunflower, so it might make us a little bit happy. I wanted to let you know about the WellBeing Principle, which is what the Care Act is based on. People will be assessed based on their well-being, their eligibility. The eligibility criteria is related to people's well-being. So I'll just talk through the different areas that are included in the Care Act as coming under the well-being umbrella, but they have said it's not exhaustive, so there are more. They're not categorised into the physical, social, psychological and spiritual. They're just kind of randomly around. So what we've got is participation in work, education, training and recreation. Great. Suitability of living accommodation, social and economic well-being, protection from abuse and neglect, physical, mental health, emotional well-being, personal dignity, domestic, family and personal well-being, control over day-to-day life, and contribution to society. I think the most interesting and the one I'm most excited about in here is contribution to society. They're recognising citizenship as an important aspect of somebody's well-being. There's a strong focus on prevention in the Care Act as well, which I'll go on to in a moment. But the whole idea of the Wellbeing Principle is that people should have good well-being. What I mean by this is people with learning disabilities having assessments where they're supported by a family carer. The assessment, yes, it would look at the support the family carer gives to that individual, but when it comes to looking at the eligibility for whether that individual has high enough needs to receive support or some money towards them getting their own support, then the carer support must be ignored. And the idea of that is so that it will really help with preparing for emergencies, so looking at the kind of support an individual needs without the carer. When it gets to care and support planning, then you would consider the support the carer wants to give, but if there's support the carer doesn't want to give or is unable to continue with, then that support would need to be provided. Carers have their own eligibility criteria in the Care Act. It's really good eligibility criteria, and I think a lot more carers are going to get more support if they ask for it, and if they ask for it in the right way. There's a much stronger focus on involvement throughout the Care Act. Because family carers are given parity of esteem and are on an equal footing, the government has recognised the importance of involving family carers in certain decisions. Now, I know that lots of people with learning disabilities don't want to be treated like a child. They don't want to be mothered by their parents if they are parents. But there are some decisions that it's really, really useful to have family carer input into. And there is a big focus on that. in the Care Act. Independent advocacy. If people have substantial difficulty in getting involved in a process in the Care Act, so having an assessment or creating a care and support plan about the support they're going to receive, if they have substantial difficulty, then an individual may be offered an independent advocate to help them go through that process. Before they're offered an independent advocate, the local authority should look at the family carer supporting that individual first. It may be most family carers are advocates for their relatives, and so naturally you would want to continue doing that and supporting them through the process of an assessment or developing a care and support plan. So the Care Act does look at going to families first rather than ruling them out altogether and then going to an external organisation. Of course, if you didn't want to get involved and you would prefer that your relative had an independent advocate, then that's an option too. Prevent, reduce, delay. There are duties on local authorities to prevent, reduce and delay needs of the population of the people that live in their area. So this means things like public health campaigns, like the Stop Smoking campaign and things like that, but it can also go right down to the individual level. So what Dalia was talking about before, if you get the right support in place now and you're prepared for emergencies and you plan for the future, then you can really, really prevent some needs from becoming more needy, if you like, and, you know, have your life as you want it rather than having these peaks and troughs. There should be a lot more about future planning, so people have support on a consistent and continual basis and thinking about the future. Throughout the Care Act, the Mental Capacity Act principles are they're included around supporting decisions and communicating with people. So I won't go into the Mental Capacity Act now because that's obviously another workshop, but this is really good news. The Mental Capacity Act is an excellent law when it's followed correctly to support individuals and to support families in the involvement in making decisions. Because it's written throughout the Care Act, there's a lot of reminders in the guidance for social workers and assessors about making sure an individual and a family carer is communicated with in a way that is right for them, and that every effort is made to involve the individual and the family carer in the assessment and care and support planning process and any other processes they go through. So if that means communicating in a different way, using talking mats or anything else, and using non-verbal communication, then the local authority needs to be making every effort to do that. So I think that's really, really fantastic that that's throughout. It does get a little bit confusing whether the Care Act or the Mental Capacity Act should be applied in some cases. But when that comes up, people can contact us and we can talk them through. But generally, the Care Act brings a lot of promise, I think. We know there are concerns around funding, but the law is the law, and the local authorities have duties to provide certain types of support. It's the law. If they don't follow the law, they're acting unlawfully, and it's illegal. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. If you say the word illegal in relation to anything other than care and support, people go, oh, it's illegal. But when we're talking about care and support for people that really need it, why are we not so shocked that local authorities are not actually following the law? So, back over to Dalia.
We'll just... Okay, we can stay. Yes, indeed. Oh, okay. So, I'm going to go backwards there. So, I mean, we've not, you know, even though we're trying our hardest in Sheffield, we're a long way from actually getting it right. It's still, we've been going for nearly 19 years, and we're still picking up on things all the time, and we're still doing our best, and there's still more demand than we're able to meet. But we're trying, and we're working collaboratively we're working together with health and social care to try and make things better for families. And I think that when we're talking about families, we also need to remember that it's not, like you say, it's not just parents, it's siblings, it's grandparents, it's aunties and uncles. The families are made up and they're all different, but we also need to make sure as well that there's a lot of families out there who are looking after each other, where there's a lot of mutual caring going on, and there are growing numbers of carers with learning disabilities themselves. And actually, if we can start to get things right for carers with learning disabilities, we'll probably get things right for everybody. So we need to be much better at recognising and supporting those carers with learning disabilities as well. So we want to sort of bring it back to some of the key messages, which are remembering, think commode, maybe. The 3 stages of getting things right. You've got to get the right help in place now, preparing for emergencies and planning for the future. And the next thing that we want to sort of end with is that good support doesn't have to be expensive. Sometimes it's about having the right attitude, having the, sort of approaching people, being prepared to listen, not to prejudge, being open and honest, and it makes things right for everybody. Oh, sorry, Rhianon. You've got to do. And then finally,
just a little reminder that it is in the law, and local authorities have to follow the law as we have to follow the law. So if they aren't following the law, then you certainly have a right to challenge certain things. So I think that's very important to remember. It's the law.